Coping with COVID, updates on the pandemic and information to help you thrive and survive COVID-19. It's brought to you by the South Carolina Department of Health and Environmental Control. Visit scdheck.gov for an updated list of testing sites and important information on how to protect yourself, your family, and friends from the coronavirus. SCDHEC, healthy people, healthy communities. In it together and the South Carolina Diabetes Advisory Council, presenting Wellness Wednesday every Wednesday on Coping with COVID. The City of Columbia Office of Business Opportunities, helping to meet the needs of small, minority, and women-owned businesses in the City of Columbia. Log on to columbiasc.net/OBO. Agape Counseling and Training Services. Call 803-779-2777 for licensed professionals of counselors and social workers helping families, engaged and married couples, and individuals of all ages gain an understanding of all aspects of their lives. If you're having a challenge coping with COVID, contact Agape Counseling and Training Services at agapects.com. And Palmetto Media Connections, connecting media and communities together. Coping with COVID, brought to you by SCDHEC. In it together, the Diabetes Advisory Council, the City of Columbia Office of Business Opportunities, Agape Counseling and Training Center, and Palmetto Media Connections.
Coping with COVID with Tre Tailor.
Happy holidays, and thank you so much for joining us for Coping with COVID, updates on the pandemic and information to help you thrive and survive COVID-19. This is part 2 of a 2-part series on lessons learned, what's next for former candidates of recent local elections. Today, we'll talk to former City Council candidates Tyler Bailey and Deitra Stover, and also mayoral candidate Tameika Issac Devine. Thank you guys so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to this conversation. I know that you will share some words of wisdom and reflection that not only, I'm sure, helped you, but could help all of us too as we head into the new year. That and more coming up next on Coping with COVID. But first, your COVID community updates. Don't forget, for the most up-to-date list of times, dates, and location for COVID testing, flu shots, and COVID vaccinations, visit scdheck.gov. Also, COVID vaccines for vets are being handled by the VA. If you are a veteran, please contact the VA for all of your COVID-related needs. There are several retail outlets that are offering the COVID shots for both children and adults. Kroger Pharmacies is one of those. You can check the screen for details. CVS is also offering vaccines at locations, including those inside Target stores. The Brooklyn Baptist Church Vaccine Clinic is also open 7 days a week. Went there yesterday and got my booster shot. I was in and out in less than 20 minutes. Stop by there at the times listed on the screen. Also, the library in Sand Hills is also not only administering COVID testing, they're also doing the shots, and they are also distributing the self-test kits. You can get up to 5 per week at the Sand Hills Library in Columbia. Now, if you're having a challenge getting to your vaccine appointment, don't miss your shot. You can catch the Comet for free. You can also get your vaccine at the Comet bus station main location at the corner of Sumter and Laurel Streets. Now, if you or someone you know is a senior or having some technology challenges, Get Set Up can help you get set up with your COVID vaccine appointment. Call the number on the screen and get set up. Also, FEMA is still administering COVID funeral expenses benefits. If you have a loved one that passed away due to COVID, please contact FEMA at the information listed on the screen. Now, there are several financial resources available. Also, the South Carolina Bar Association and SC Legal Services has a toll-free number and website for rental and mortgage help. Lexington County has a bill assistance program. You can contact the information on the screen. SC Housing and Dominion Energy also has an assistance program for both rent and utilities. And the SC Housing Frontline Workers Home Buying Assistance Program is also still in effect. Now, if you or someone you know is having a challenge coping with COVID, please contact SC Hopes. It's distributed from the South Carolina Department of Mental Health, SC Hopes. Finally, the annual MLK Drive Harvest Hope Food Bank fundraising campaign is going on now. It's you can donate financially or with a non-perishable food item through January 17th. Contact the City of Columbia at 803-545-3100 for more information. You're watching Coping with COVID, updates on the pandemic and information to help you thrive and survive COVID-19. We're streaming live on the Tailor Made production page on Facebook. That's the home of Coping with COVID. Please go over there, hit like and share and follow. Not only will you be able to get notifications when to watch Coping with COVID Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday at 2 p.m., you can also get all of your COVID-related updates and watch past shows. We're also streaming live on YouTube. I want to say hello to everyone streaming on YouTube. Thank you so much for joining us. And please don't forget to hit the subscribe button. We also have a presence on Twitter and on Instagram. Hey, don't forget that scrolling at the bottom of the screen, all of the information that I just shared with you, the information about the vaccine, about flu shots, financial assistance, all of that will be scrolling at the bottom of the screen throughout the show. So please post and share this information out. Such needed and important information. And we'll get the message to the masses. Well, this is a conversation I really wanted to have. If you joined us yesterday, you saw us talking to 3 other candidates, Hamilton Jacobs, also Jim Manning and Heather Bauer. Well, we learned some great things yesterday, and I know we're going to learn some things today, because some of the best lessons that we learn happen when things don't go as planned. That's the case, once again, with these 3 former candidates who I'm so glad agreed to join us to share their thoughts on their former campaigns, what they learned, and how they're moving forward. And as we go into the new for 2022, let's reflect and regroup. And I know that these folks can help us. Attorney Tameika Issac Devine served on Columbia City Council for almost 20 years before running for mayor earlier this year. As the first African-American woman council member and the first African-American to win an at-large seat, she has led the city and state advocating for all communities, including the homeless, LGBTQ, women. She's won multiple awards and has been recognized for her tireless work by groups like the Girl Scouts, the Boy Scouts, Phi Beta Sigma, National Council of Negro Women, the Urban League, and more. She's recently taken the lead, and can't wait to talk to her about this, about on the Together We Can project. It's a collaboration between the City of Columbia and Richland School District 1. It's an educational collaboration to support and enhance student achievement, promote the district's successes, and encourage the community to become more involved in Richland 1 schools. Tameika, thank you so much for joining us today, darling. I appreciate you.
Thank you, Trey. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you so much. Deitra Stover is a former educator and current government relations manager and lobbyist for an environmental and conservation organization in South Carolina. She firmly believes that any public policy that considers the children will have the most durable outcomes. Her community involvement includes work with the Children's Hospital, National Council of Negro Women, Save the Children Action Network, and the South Carolina Conservationists of Color. Thank you, Deitra.
Thank you so much for having me, Trey.
Absolutely. Finally, last but not least, Attorney Tyler Bailey is the managing attorney for Bailey Law Firm, serving the entire state of South Carolina in personal injury, criminal defense, and victims' rights litigation. He ran for Columbia City Council at large, seeking to help Columbia reach its full potential and to serve the people of Columbia. Thanks so much, Tyler.
Thank you.
Yeah. When we first came on, it was just Tyler, Tameika, and I. And he said, we've got 3 Hampton University alum. I didn't say this, but I didn't go to Hampton University. I went to Hampton Institute. I'm an HIer. You're an HIer.
Yeah, that's true.
It's the same difference.
Same beautiful sea, same waterfront.
Home by the sea. That's right. Home by the sea. Listen, I want to ask you first, Tyler, since we're talking, what went right in your campaign?
Well, before I even get to that, I want to thank everybody who voted for me. I think that's what went right. I mean, I received a lot of support from people all the way from Kilbourne all the way to Greenview and anywhere in between. So I think what went right was a lot of people were receptive of the message that I was stumping around the city, and they were receptive of me as a person, as a candidate. So it's something I didn't take for granted, and I think that went right. I mean, anybody who puts themselves out there to serve and better the community, I think things are going to go right, because not a lot of people put their name on that dotted line and put themselves out there like that. So it was a good experience. A lot of people voted for me, so at least that part, I think, went right for our campaign.
What about you, Deitra? What went right in the campaign for you?
You know, I had the opportunity, and just as Tyler said, thank you to all the individuals who believed and invested in Deitra Stover Matthews. It really, really means a lot. But what went right for me is that I had the opportunity to meet so many different people, Trey. I mean, from all walks of life, having the opportunity to stand on doorsteps and hear the celebrations, but sometimes even hear the suffering and the trauma, and being able to empathize, being able to place myself in their shoes without even considering my own plight. And so that's what I take most from this race. As Tyler said, being able to put yourself out there. And I believe that some of the relationships that I have now, I would have never had those relationships had I not decided to put myself out there. Some of those people, Trey, I really, really do consider my dearest friends now. And so I am so deeply grateful.
Yeah. So let's talk to the veteran politician now. Tameika, what went right this time? And you've run several times before, but this was a little different campaign. It was a different seat and obviously a different outcome. What went right, though?
I have to echo my colleagues here of thanking those who believed in me and our campaign and spent time and talent and money to get us not just to the first election, but the runoff and just, it hurts to be shy, just, 800 votes. But what went right was the amount of support that we were able to garner. I mean, we got a diversity of support from across the city. And I think that really truly is what a campaign is about. It's not about, it's not about color. It's not about, your lifestyle. It's not about your income, but it's about, the people who are passionate about, what they care about in this city. And so I think that's what went right on our campaign. We were able to pull together a wide range of people, a great coalition that we built that really, truly to echo what Deitra said, I've got folks who are now some of my dearest friends. We talk all the time, and it's because we have pulled together so much. So I think that's what went right.
So let me ask you then, what went wrong?
For me, I have to say, and, I was telling somebody the other day, I still actually don't sleep much. In the quiet hours is where your mind races and you kind of figure out, what if this and what if that. But, I have to believe, God doesn't make mistakes. So I honestly wouldn't say anything went wrong. I think that we were not successful at combating a lot of negativity that doesn't just happen here in Columbia, but it's happening nationally, which I think is another conversation that needs to be had, is how do we bring civility back to politics? How do we get people engaged on policy issues and things that are important to everyday people and not around things that divide our community. So for me, I don't think anything went wrong. I mean, are there certain things that I would have liked to turn out better? Certainly. And I would have loved to been able to be competitive financially and was not able to do that. But I think that all that is part of the journey that God had for me.
Yeah, I'll definitely, you make such a great point about turning our political system and the engagement around, I mentioned yesterday, and I've said this to you, there needs to be voter education 365, not just when there is an election coming up, because people just don't know, one, what's going on, and then they don't even understand the political process. Hamilton yesterday said he talked to so many people that didn't even know there was a school board race, so I hope that, and I don't know, and like I said, you and I have had this conversation. I don't know if that's the voter registration commission. I don't know who that is. I don't know if that's Tameika Issac Devine, Deitra Stover, and Tyler Bailey, incorporated. But there needs to be some type of effort to really do a Stacey Abrams kind of thing in South Carolina to really engage people about voting and the importance and the particulars of it. Deitra, what do you think went wrong, so to speak, if you want to call it what went wrong in your campaign?
Well, I have been in deep reflection, and I was not fortunate enough to even make it to the runoff, and so I've been in deep reflection. And to Tameika's point, to Councilwoman's point about everything happens for a reason, I have a deep faith. In fact, I think that my faith with Christ deepened throughout this entire process. But even with that said, I have been in deep reflection, trying to figure out where I could have done something different. And while there are many things I think I have landed on, one of probably the greatest thing that I would do differently is as a novice, as someone who never saw herself even in this space, running for elected office, I think all the political advice that Deitra received, all the political advice I received, I took it as it was coming from an expert. And I never really filtered or vetted the advice. And it was, someone gave me advice, I almost tried to put it in play almost immediately before I vetted it. And maybe that comes with, because I'm so trusting. And some would argue that, I'm so trusting to a fault, but that's just a character of Deitra. I'm always going to see the best and the brightest in everyone. And so that was my takeaway for me, and where I probably could have done a bit more vetting, a bit more filtering through the advice.
Wow, that's really interesting, Deitra. So do you think someone's gave you advice, wrong advice, purposefully?
Well, I think most advice people give, whether it is solicited advice or not, it's based upon their lived experiences.
Right.
So
whether they have any or not.
Right. So while I consider the intent of the advice, I do not believe that it was ill intent. I just think that, when I say vetting the advice or filtering through the advice, I think it needs to be germane to what I am trying to accomplish. It needs to be germane to maybe even the race that I'm actually running in. And so while there's no ill intent, I just think that I should have done a better job with that.
Yeah. Tyler, let me rephrase the question like Deitra did. What do you think what do you think you could have or should have done differently? And like Deitra made the point, you got to the runoff. So and it was a huge race in the amount of people. And I'll tell you, it's interesting when we get to one of the other questions, what surprised you the most? Heather Bauer yesterday said it surprised her that there were so many people in the race, So as the line and say, millions didn't make it, but you're one of the ones who did. So what do you think you should have or could have done differently?
Well, the first obvious thing I wish I could have done is win. I wish I would have won the race. It's so much hard work, and Deitra and Tameika know. I mean, the campaign, you put so much into it. Yeah. And it really spills over to every area of your life. It's your family, your health, your mental health, your emotional being, your physical health, your business. And I put everything into the campaign. And one thing I wish I could have done was win, because I received support from so many people who I felt like they put their faith in me. They donated to the campaign. They knocked on doors. They prayed for me. They were there to hear me complain about the campaign. So I wish I could have won for the people who really were optimistic about my candidacy. But the one thing about our race is we had a lot of qualified, great people who ran. So voters had a lot of choices to make. Mm-hmm. And so at the end of the day, I think the voters, they made their choice in my race. And I think I ran a very, very good race. I received a lot of support across the city, but I wish I would have won. Not for me personally, but for the people who could have benefited from me being in office and the people who put their faith in me.
Do you think you should have or could have done something differently?
Well, if I could do anything differently, I would make sure to have more fun during the whole campaign. I was very intense the entire time. And I mean, it consumed, my entire mental space. I wish I would have took some time just to laugh a little bit more and just really soak it in, because you're doing so much, but you're not even realizing the magnitude of what you're trying to do. So I wish I would have took some time just to appreciate, to have the opportunity to put myself out there to serve a little more.
Yeah. Do you think you pinpointed anything, and you may not have, that went wrong?
You could probably ask me that question 5 different ways.
Yeah.
I'll still give you the same answer. No, I can't say anything.
All right.
I will say this. I'll tell you one thing is Columbia has changed a lot over the last 10 years. The demographics have changed. There's 10,000 less Black people who live in the city than there was when Mayor Benjamin first ran. And so I think that the climate of this race, with the mayoral race and the at-large race, nobody could have predicted the political climate that we were in. Yeah. And so, maybe if God gave me a vision of the future, here's what the climate's actually going to be, and here's how turnout's going to be, maybe I would made some slight adjustments, but I think I ran a good race. I can't pinpoint one thing strategically that I would have done differently.
Right. You're a lawyer, so I guess I couldn't trip you up with that question.
You tried though. You tried. I mean,
I was just asking.
It's a good question. It's a good question.
So Tameika, what surprised you the most about this campaign? I mentioned that Heather Bauer yesterday said that the amount of people in it surprised her. Was there anything that surprised you?
For my race, the mayoral race, well, and I guess this, of course, in the at-large as well. But what surprised me was, I think the political and racial dynamics that the race took towards the end. And I want to say this, and and I hate it when I read some of these newspaper commentators, because I think that they miss the boat when they don't talk about the outside factors that were placed into the race. The tons of money that came in from Forward Columbia and the South Carolina Republican Party and the South Carolina Realtors. Those are things that came, and I think that people, to me, that I think helped the climate be as polarizing as it should have, and that surprised me. I've shared this with lots of folks. When we first entered this race, out of the candidates that were in the mayoral race, Mayor-elect Brickman was probably one of the people that was closest to me. Today we don't speak, and that I think that's hard to see that what I thought was a friendship, at least from a genuine friendship from my part, that someone would allow negativity to actually get you to the point where you are. So I think that surprised me. I've run at large 5 times successfully. I've always enjoyed support from white, Black, young, old, and I did for this race as well. So I want to make sure people realize that it wasn't that all the Black people voted for me and Tyler, all the white people voted for the 2 folks who won, because that's not what happened. I mean, if you look at the demographics and who voted, I got a lot of diverse support. But what happened, to Tyler's point, is what surprised me was the level of probably what we're seeing from 4 years of President Trump and some of that's happening on a national level. This race was actually targeted, I learned later, by the National Republican Party. And so that surprised me, that the National Republican Party and South Carolina Republican Party would put so much energy into the mayor's race in this city. And that surprised me a lot, which also I think is a lesson that we have to learn about the future. And what does that mean for the future of our city moving forward and being progressive and inclusive?
Yeah. You mentioned that you were surprised about the Democratic Party or Republican, the Republicans putting so much effort into this race, and that you were surprised that someone that you regarded as a friend, that relationship was questioned. Were there other friendships like that or relationships like that that surprised you?
Oh yeah. I mean, I will say that when I say that lessons are learned and that everything, it's not necessarily, may not have been what God intended, but God allowed. I prayed, and you and I talked about this before I announced. I prayed with Pastor Jackson. I asked for 2 things. I said, number 1, that God would reveal to me the things that I needed to know. And number 2, that I always kept the people that I was running for top of mind, and that I didn't get worried about the distractions. And so for me, the lessons that I needed to learn sometimes are hard lessons. And that means that, everybody that you think is for you is not for you. And that some of the closest people to you are in the best position to hurt you. But I think that is what God needed me to know in order to get to that next place.
Yeah, absolutely. While we're talking about lessons learned, Deitra, do you want to chime in on lessons learned? What did you learn?
Well, 2 things, just to follow up with Councilwoman Devine about what surprised her. I don't know whether or not I was just so hopeful, and whether I was kind of leaning closely to the voter turnout from our national race, our presidential race. But it surprised me with the number of folks who did not turn out for the election on November 2nd and the turnout on November 16th. I was actually surprised about that. And to the point, you know, it's a hard pill to swallow when, and I'll be honest with you, I received some advice after I launched my campaign. You know, some of the relationships that you, or some of the folks that you think are going to support you, are not going to support you. And while you hear that and listen to it and you receive it when it happens, sometimes it can be hurtful.
Yeah.
But even with that said, for me personally, I have been gifted with so much growth through that experience, Trey. And so my greatest lesson learned in this experience is that you can have fear and bravery they can coexist at the same time.
Yeah.
You can
Yeah.
be, you can, and I remember on a campaign trail, I heard that I was called an idealist. And I remember thinking in deep reflection, you can be an idealist and a practical person at the same time. One does not abandon the other.
Yeah.
And so those are my greatest lessons. Being fearful and brave. And I've been able to pass it on to my daughters who were very attentive. They were really involved in this election. And they're 16 and 12 now, but I was able to pass that on to them. You can be brave, but you don't have to say that you're not also scared or fearful at the same time.
Yeah, we're talking to Deitra Stover Matthews, Tyler Bailey, and Tameika Issac Devine join us today on Coping with COVID. I'm Tre Tailor, and we're talking to former local candidates about lessons learned and what's next. Cynthia Watson says she loves the transparency of these candidates. She said you all ran a great campaign. Mitchell Peace, Joy Jen says great discussion. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please post and share this information out. So Tyler, what surprised you the most?
Well, on a lighter topic, I was surprised by a number of forums. I mean, we were in so many forums, and it almost started sounding like, you know, you listen to a broken record because the same questions are asked just a different way.
Yeah.
And it's a different, maybe a host of the forum, but you may have the same, 5, 10 people who are participating, and you don't want to be a no-show to the forum. So
yeah.
it doesn't matter what you have going on. You may have a meeting or a call, or you're up all night the night before, but you still have a forum to go to. So I was surprised by the number of forums. Let's see. I was surprised by, a lot of people, even though to me, you had the mayor's race, the at-large race, and then District 1, 4 was pretty much an unopposed race. But a lot of people they knew about the mayor's race, but they didn't know about our race. So it surprised me that you could spend over $100,000 on the campaign, and some people don't even know there's an election going on. So, I mean, the level of, I guess, direct attention to get people to pay attention and vote, the effort that needs to be done for that is a lot. I was surprised by the campaign, because every campaign they say is different. The political climate for our election, if there's another race in 2 years or 4 years, it could be completely different. And so understanding that, I mean, politics, I'm a rookie, I only ran once. I don't have a lot of experience, but it seems to be almost like it reminds me of my football playing days, where you don't know what the scheme of the coach's scheme is going to be on the other side. You don't know how the weather's going to be. It could be raining, it could be snowing, it could be hot. You just really have to run your race, do your fundamentals, what you think you should do, and let the chips fall where they fall at the end of the day. And then hindsight's always 20/20. I mean, you have so many people around you tell you should have did this, or you should have did that, or if you would have called this person, maybe you would have got more support. But I mean, it's really no telling.
Yeah.
I don't think there's no science to it.
Yeah. What about lessons learned from you, Tyler? Both Tameika and Deitra have shared some of the grave lessons and great lessons that they've learned. And, it's so interesting. Both of them really basically said similar things that I'm sitting here thinking, when I said during the open, some of the best lessons, the most needed lessons, are the hardest ones, the ones that sting and hurt us. But we still need to know them. What about you?
Yeah. Well, I compare this to my football career a little bit, because I went to Hampton on a football scholarship, but I didn't play all 4 years. And I got to college, and I was good in football. I really liked basketball more, but I was better in football, and I wanted to go to Hampton, so I got a scholarship there. And I realized that I wasn't bringing what I need to the table to play at that level at that point. And so when I stopped playing football, I always direct my attention to give 110% effort in anything that I did. And so what you're saying is a loss isn't a loss unless you don't learn from it.
Yeah.
So the result may look like a loss, but if you learn something, you grow from it, I think it's still a win. And what I learned is that I'm capable of doing more, and we all are capable of doing more than we think we can. You know, we are sometimes, you know, you like to be very prepared, and I always like to be prepared. So if I had 3 forms, I would think, well, man, I don't have enough time to really study all the material like I would want. And I learned to trust God and walk by faith, that He will lead me more when I get there. I'll be ready. You know, you may not be as ready as you think you are, but God will lead you to where you are. I learned to trust Him more. I learned that I can do more than I think I can. I could be present for my family. I could take care of my business, and I could serve in the community as well. You don't have to just do one. You can be a good mother, and you can be a tremendous business person and a public servant. Be a good father, and you can be a good business person. You don't have to sacrifice one for the other. So I learned that I'm capable of doing more than I think.
Yeah, great. We're talking about lessons learned and what's next on coping with COVID. And we're featuring 3 former local candidates. Tameika Issac Devine, of course, she ran for mayor of the city of Columbia. Deitra Stover Matthews and Tyler Bailey both ran for Tameika's old seat, the at-large seat for Columbia City Council. And when we come back, they're going to tell us what's next on the agenda. That's coming up next on Coping with COVID. I'm Tre Tailor.
Hi, I'm Kimberly Aiken-Cochran. As Miss America, I know that taking care of yourself is important. Part of taking care of your health is knowing if you're at risk of type 2 diabetes. Prediabetes is serious and puts you at risk for developing type 2 diabetes. 90% of South Carolinians who have it don't know they have it. Visit inittogethersc.org. Take an online test to find out your risk and join a diabetes prevention program. Brought to you by the Diabetes Action Council of South Carolina.
Do you have a gamer on your Christmas list? Computers Unique can fill their Christmas wish. Do you have a student or designer that needs something special? Stop by Computers Unique Dutch Square Mall for all your holiday gift needs. Gaming laptops and desktops, the iMac and Mac Pro Apple laptops, plus the new curved monitors are all at Computers Unique. And with prices starting at $175, everyone can get their Christmas wish from Computers Unique Dutch Square Mall. Call 803-351-5821 for Computers Unique.
The Comet gives me a reliable source of transportation.
It's very convenient to me, and they have wonderful drivers.
It's clean, and it builds community. It's fun to meet people.
It makes me feel like really independent. It's just fun.
Comet's always going to be there, and it gets me everywhere I need to go.
We try to ride every single day. Comedy is our livelihood.
You're watching Coping with COVID, updates on the pandemic and information to help you thrive and survive COVID-19. I'm Tre Tailor. We're streaming live on the Tailor Made production page. Please go over there, hit like and share and follow. Not only will you be able to get notifications as to when to watch Coping with COVID, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. First Monday with comedian George Wallace, and of course, Wellness Wednesday on Monday. On Wednesday from the Diabetes Advisory Council and In It Together SC. We're also streaming live on YouTube. I want to say hi to all of you YouTubers. Please don't forget to hit the subscribe button. We also have a presence on Instagram and also on Twitter. Hey, don't forget to post and share this information out so we can get the message to the masses. We've got resources available as far as jobs, COVID testing, financial assistance, and that information is scrolling at the bottom of the screen. It's much needed, and we want to get it out to the community. We are getting ready for what's new for you in 2022 by reflecting on lessons learned from past local candidates. Hit the replay button if you just joined us for great insight and information from Tameika Issac Devine, Deitra Stover, and Tyler Bailey. I want to ask Tameika, start back with you. Do you want to be invited? I already know this answer, but you spent 20 years, almost just about 20 years, almost half of your lifetime as a public servant. And now, well, as in a couple of weeks, you will technically no longer be an elected official. Will you still want to be involved in some way in the city?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's part of who I am. The elected position, the title is just that. It doesn't change the person I am or the way that I want to serve this community. And so the question is really, what does that look like? And I can't say I know what that looks like right now, because you're right. I mean, it's been almost 20 years of my life. I shared, all of my children, all they've ever known is mommy being an elected official. And so, I have to figure that out. It's kind of like a divorce. And so I'm going through that grieving process and everything, but very strong in my faith. So I've been praying on it. And just yesterday in my meditation, or Wednesday in my meditation, God spoke very, very clear to me. And he said, be still. This is the time that he wants me to be still. And so, because my mind has been racing. I mentioned I don't sleep much. So I wake up in the middle of the night. I should do this. I should do this. No. And I've been constantly kind of trying to frame the what's next for me. And he spoke to me very clearly. And it's like, that's not what he wants me to do. He wants me to take this break. And so I'm taking a very clean break from the city. I'll still be out and doing stuff. I've got lots of things I'm doing even over the holiday season in my individual capacity that's serving the community. And then at the point where he speaks to me as to what that next looks like, I'm going to be ready. But I know that it'll be serving this community in some capacity as a community advocate and continue to move forward, particularly the issues that I'm passionate about, the issues of equity and inclusion and affordable housing.
Yeah, I want to talk about that a little bit later on in the conversation about some things that you're involved in. But since you talked about your children, what type of impact, strain did this election impart upon them? And how did you deal with any adversity, including family stress and strain?
I don't really feel like it caused any strain on them. I mean, my girls are old enough that particularly the negativity that happened at the end of the campaign, they were aware of. They watch commercials. My daughter goes to a school that, people, she's part of Young Democrats. And so they knew the things that were being said about their parents. They knew the things that were being said about me. And so I think that was a little bit of a strain, but we had to have that conversation even before the election. And Jamie, he had an election last year, went through some similar stuff. So we've had those conversations with them. So from my standpoint, my kids are very resilient, and they understand that, things happen and things are said. Your parents, and you know who they are. And so that didn't cause as much strain, but I think it was uncomfortable. For us, I think for me, like I said, I think probably the biggest thing was the folks that, I can accept people not supporting. People have a right to support whoever they want. What is hurtful is when people intentionally try and hurt other people. And some of that happened in our race. And so for me, that was kind of I think that was really the only adversity, the biggest adversity I think that I dealt with. And how I dealt with that was I would pray and I'd meditate. And I, again, would always say, God, keep me focused. That's a distraction. This person saying this person, making this deal, to hurt me. That's a distraction. My thing is to focus on why I'm running and who I'm running for. And so even today, like I mentioned, I'll be doing some stuff. People are still calling me like, Tameika, are you coming to our Christmas party? You're still our council person. Mm-hmm. I'm still going to be doing those things. And so I think that's kind of how I got out of that adversity, because I realized that comes with the territory when you put yourself out there in public for a public office. But if you know who you are and whose you are, and you know that God will take care of everything, you can push through whatever those adversities are.
Yeah, Deitra, Tameika is, sharing her experiences from a standpoint of being in it almost 20 years. This was your first race. What were there any types of stresses or strains, or how did you handle any type of adversity for you and your girls and your husband?
Well, my husband often says that I'm the glue of the family, right? We've been a military family for so many years. And that includes my husband missing, so many Christmas mornings. We're about to celebrate Christmas and next week. And he's always seen me as the glue, but I've always seen my husband as my safe landing. And true to form, he was my sounding board. Every night before we went to bed, he was my safe landing. In fact, with all that, what we're about to celebrate our 20th wedding anniversary in less than a month. And with all that, thank you. And with all that we have gone through as a military couple, as a parent of a daughter that has a very chronic health history. You know, and now running an election that I never intended. You know, that was never my life's dream. My husband and I are actually vibing on a whole nother frequency.
That's great.
And I am so abundantly grateful. I mean, he's it. He, you know, that is my man. And you know, you know, we actually flipped roles. I mean, it was almost like a light switch. You know, I remember in, you know, the 7.5 months of this campaign trail, you know, I didn't have to cook anymore, Trey. I didn't have to do the laundry. I didn't have to pick the girls up from school. And it was almost like an we didn't even have that conversation.
Right.
You know, we were just, we didn't even have a conversation. He just knew what to do.
That's enough for us to run again.
Well, I mean, hey, I mean, I promise you, he's been my loudest cheerleader. My daughters have been my loudest cheerleader. Wasn't the only strain that I think was almost self-inflicted, because there would be times I would feel guilty. I would feel guilty if I couldn't, you know, answer a question for my 12-year-old, my 16-year-old right at that moment. Sometimes I would have to redirect them to their dad. That was not something my children were used to. You know, my girls I would always be the person they come to, and then to see that. And so I think that was probably the greatest challenge in regards to family. But I am just, you know, I don't have a horror story. I don't have a doom and gloom story. It is one that I think God just beautifully crafted. And it shows that, you know, God will form two people separately and bring them together for a reason. And it very much, it's a beautiful one.
Yeah. Tyler, you have a young family and a baby on the way. Congratulations. How did the campaign impact your family, and how did you deal with it?
Well, before I ran, I talked to my wife, and I said, look, if you feel like we're not ready to run, I won't run. And she gave me the green light to do it. And the agreement was that we all had to be all in. And it definitely was a strain on us, because my son, who was probably 1.5 at the time, you know, my wife would do drop off. She would do pickup. She would continue to cook. I mean, she would handle everything for our kid. We moved in the middle of the campaign. I was able to be around during the move. All my boxes were still packed up. And I mean, she held it down the entire race, and she helped me out too. She was my biggest cheerleader. We would talk about how I performed on forums. We'll talk about issues, whether that's a campaign issue, a potential supporter issue. And so I couldn't have done anything that I did without her help. And a lot was on her plate. And so what I've been trying to do now is trying to make up for that, you know, seeing what she wants to do, how I can help her further her goals, be more present at home, taking care, make sure I'm doing drop off and pickups as much as possible. Because I think that, you know, spouses should help each other, or each other's help meet. So I'm trying to help meet her needs in this season, because she sacrificed a lot to help me out as well. It was definitely strained. I was joking around after the campaign. I looked at my son. I told my wife, hey, his head's kind of big. I'm just really looking at it, being able to pay attention to my son since I've been running for an entire year. But there's so much stuff that I wasn't able to pay attention to. And if I didn't have a wife like my wife, things would have fell apart, but she held it down.
We talked about earlier that you were in the runoff. Do you think you'll want to run again, and for what?
Well, if it's right for me personally, if I feel like it's the right timing, that God's calling me to serve in another level, I will put myself out there again. But it's not going to be just because I think I should do something, or I think I want to do this. I really believe, public servant and Councilwoman Devine could attest to it. It needs to be a calling, I believe. It needs to be the right time. It shouldn't be for things like ego or, no, I want to win this time. It needs to be that it's a God opportunity for me to help people, and I can help further make the community better by putting myself out there. If all those stars don't align, then I won't. But if they do align, I will.
Deitra, I joked and said, you know, since you and your husband's roles flipped because you were on the campaign trail, but are you considering running for something else again?
Yes. And I do not know what that it's going to be, but yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And you mentioned a couple of times today that you didn't even think you were going to run. Why did you run?
So I remember learning that Councilwoman Devine was
running for mayor.
Was running for mayor. And I remember hearing a voice, and Tyler said, when, this has to be something that you're called to do. And I remember hearing a voice, well, what about you? And I didn't even have that conversation with my husband for a long time. And I remember, I would not sleep at night, and I kept saying, God, I don't want to do this. I do not want to do this, because I've been serving in the community at some form of passion in the background. And I was okay with that. I really was okay with it. And I remember before I went to bed one night, I said, God, if you can just let me go to sleep, I promise you I will be obedient and do this. And I had to go back, and I had to go to God, and I said, okay, God, I did not want to do this. So why did you do this to me? Why did you? So I was like, I didn't want to do this. So why did you set me up like this? And so I'm still in conversation with him, and I'm hearing, and I'm hearing it. And so when you ask that question, Trey, 2 years from now, I may not be. You ask that question, will I run again? I may say no, but today, because I'm still being obedient to those restless nights, the answer is yes. Because I didn't want this. I was so okay. And the work that I do professionally now is but somewhat behind the scenes. And I'm okay with it. I'm okay with it. But who knows? So the answer today is yes.
Yeah. What is your answer today, Tameika?
My answer today is I'm going to be obedient in wherever God places me. And it's funny that Deitra made that comment. I've had those conversations as well, because I had to go back when you were talking about things, and I shared this when we announced my devotion on the day that I announced was entitled Elevated Destiny.
Mm-hmm.
And I brought it out again because the very last sentence of that just says, let this be a time that you ask God to lead you to a new place, to a rock that is much higher than your comfort, your current identity, or your comprehension. And so when I had those conversations, as Deitra talked about, like, God, you called me to do this. And if that was your will, why wasn't your will for me to win? And I think, again, his will was for me to learn lessons and probably to see some things, even in the city that I've served for 20 years. I've seen some things over the last year within this city, some due to COVID, some others that are just heartbreaking, that need real strong leadership in order to stand up and speak out about them. And so, is God telling me that you can do that without that title? And I'm looking at that. But at some point, he may tell me, okay, now I've prepared you for that next level, and I'm going to be obedient. So as of right now, I'm doing what I said. I'm being still, and I'm listening, and I'm going to see where he directs me. But the service will continue in some capacity.
James Patrick was on the show earlier this week, Tameika, and he mentioned that you are partnering with him on Love, Peace, and Sweat. And I know that you're also working on the collaboration, as I mentioned in the beginning of the show, with one and the City of Columbia on Together We Can. Can you tell us about those two projects and anything else that you're working on in this time that you are resting? So you
I was laughing because I was like, it probably doesn't sound like I'm resting, but yeah, I am doing some things. So, as you know, physical well-being, health, and wellness has been a big standpoint for me as a council person. Mental health has been very big. And so James has started Love, Peace, and Sweat to tie together your physical well-being and your mental well-being. And so he and I were talking about this even before the election and how we would do that if I were mayor, and how I would help with that platform. And so what I told him is, me not being mayor shouldn't change the plan that we had. And so I will be working with him to make sure that we're bringing awareness around mental health and physical well-being, and how you can't have one without the other, and how important it is, especially in our community, to have those conversations. So I'll be working with him on that. Together We Can Read, I started, actually it's not new. Together We Can Read is like 15 years old. And I'll be honest, I don't know if it's going to continue. That's probably my biggest, I say there's no regrets, but that's probably my biggest sadness is over the years, I've started so many programs at the city, and none of them need me to continue, but they need a champion. They need somebody who's going to feel they're important. And I just don't know if there's the willingness in this administration to carry forward some of those programs. So Together We Can Read was a partnership between the city and Richland One. And so I've chosen that if the city does not pick it up, I will continue that as a parent. I'm a Richland One parent. I have a kid in elementary, middle, and high school. And so I will be pulling together other parents and how do we continue to bring that support to Richland One. And then Deitra knows this. I've talked to her about this. I was really championing, especially over the last 2 years, equity and inclusion. That's what my whole campaign was about. And so we have an equity survey that the city commissioned. It is my understanding that the new administration doesn't believe the data, and they don't feel like there is an equity issue at the level that we know there is. And so I plan to champion that. And so I am in the process of working with our existing nonprofits and patterning community engagement, not from the city level. And again, I think this is probably what God wanted. It doesn't need to be the mayor's office or the city doing it, but it needs to be the community. And so taking the community, grassroots community, and then we take the data in a way that we can talk about it in our communities in a real way and move it up. So those are the things that I'm working on right now. That's enough for right this second. And but I'm going to continue to be that voice and to champion these issues that people have got to know are an issue, not only now, but more than ever in our city. Based on even these election results, we have a divided city. And the more divided we get, the more inequitable it gets. And we have to stand up.
Yeah. Do you think, Tameika, that you have an opportunity, and would you pursue an opportunity to talk to, negotiate with, converse with the new administration to try to continue some of the initiatives that you launched that were really impactful?
Quite honestly, yeah. I mean, I want to serve, and I will do that in a way that is good. What I will not do, though, is to be pacified, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I will not allow someone to say this is important, but then they actually don't think it's important. To me, I think that will stifle my voice, and not just my voice, but the voice of the community that I'm bringing with me. And so again, I think that God knows what He's doing. And so part of it might be saying you don't need to be part of a structure like the government to make these issues important. And so, so I'll never say no, but that ask hasn't happened. And if it's not coming from a genuine place, I wouldn't do it.
Yeah. Tyler, you're busy. You got a baby on the way. You've got a little 2-year-old. You've got your law firm. Not that can't keep you busy. What else do you have coming up that you're working on in the community?
Well, the immediate future right now is almost similar to what Councilwoman Devine said. I'm being still, and I'm going to hear God and figure out what's next. But I am still working in the areas that I'm passionate about. I mean, gun violence is still a problem here. There's recently a murder of a young woman off of Fairfield Road. We still have the same inequities that are in Columbia that existed when I announced my candidacy. And so in no way am I just going to sit on my hands, because I live in Columbia. I'm raised a family here. I love the place. I got so many friends all throughout the city. So if there's anything that I can do to make the city better, I'm going to put myself out there to do it. And you don't need to, the change could be made outside of government.
Absolutely.
There's a movie I like with I think Tom Cruise, A Few Good Men. And at the end of it, the soldier, he's been decommissioned, he's no longer in the military, and he's feeling down. And Tom Cruise says, look, you don't have to be in the military to still be an honorable person. And you don't have to be in government to still make change and care about your community. You can still make change in whatever form or fashion in the seat that you have, whether that's in your living room or in your law firm, and you can make a difference. And so I plan to still do the same. And when the timing's right, if God's pulling me towards serving on a public level, I'll consider it. But right now, my immediate future plans are to enjoy the holidays and take care of home and kind of get my feet back underneath me.
Yeah. Deitra, do you want to chime in on what you're working on now?
Sure. So I jumped right back in. You know that I am the government relations manager for an environmental organization here in South Carolina, and we're about to start the second year of a 2-year legislative session next month. And so I have been working behind the scenes with some of our conservation and environmental partners across the state of South Carolina, trying to figure out a way to push clean air, clean water, access to safe green space for all South Carolinians. Even while our elected officials are charged with reallocating or allocating an unprecedented amount of money from our federal government, from a state surplus, and going through the redistricting process as well. So we're trying to find our space and working behind the scenes, but I'll be doing that. I would often tell people I'm a government relations manager. A lot of times they will only see me as an environmental lobbyist, and that's really probably only 40% of the work that I do. And so I'll continue to lean into that. I have really got back involved with the Children's Hospital here in Columbia. I'm getting more involved with the National Hydrocephalus Association. In fact, we actually have a national strategic committee coming up. With Save the Children Action Network, getting involved again with voter engagement. And so while it was on pause, while I ran this race, I'm eager and excited and ready to get back to work with the work that I was already doing.
Yeah. So if you could say to someone that may be interested in politics or making a major change in their lives, and running for an office is a change, it's a major change, what advice or insight would you give them? And Tyler, I want to start with you.
When I first started my law firm, so many people told me I need to work for somebody else. You're too young to do it. Are you sure it's the right time for your family and your career? And I had to be confident in knowing what God put in me to see it out. And so somebody told me, hey, they want to run for office or they want to embark on some journey or challenge that seems out of the box. I would say that it's your obligation to get that message out there. You got to, close your ears off to doubters and naysayers. And you have to always, because doubt can come from inside too. So there's a whole lot of competing forces. And I would say, if you believe that you're being called towards that, go ahead and do it. And hopefully the wind blows on your back and you run full steam ahead. But just make sure that you see it out, because it's good to have support. You want support, but you can't get moved when some other people that you think would support you are unsupportive. One thing I learned from the campaign is you'll have somebody who you thought would support you, a good friend for your entire life, won't support you at all. And then there'll be somebody else you don't even know may be your biggest supporter. So you don't know where your support's going to come from. And it's your job to see the vision out that God's put in you. And I'll just encourage them to see that through.
Deitra, what about you? What advice or insight would you give?
Remain authentic. That was a prayer that I would often pray. And when people would ask initially, when I would tell them that I was running for office, they would say, what can I do? And I would say, pray for me. Pray that I remain authentic. Pray for my stamina and pray for my husband and my children. And so be authentic. A lot of times, people will see politics. They'll see the good, the bad, and the ugly, but sometimes the ugly is what's highlighted most. And it keeps good people, genuine people from the process. And so I would tell someone, step out on faith. If God is calling you to do this, if this is your passion, if your passion is to serve the people, not interest, but if your passion and you're leaning into who you truly are, do that, and don't be afraid. There's that saying, be the change that you want to see. Don't allow what you see to stop you from doing. I mean, truly go at it and be the change that you want to see. And one way to do that is to remain authentic. That was something that I was so committed to doing, was to be and remain authentic, because at the end of the day, I got to get some sleep, and I want to sleep at night. And so, and I'm grateful that I held tight to that commitment. So be authentic.
Yeah, thank you. And Tameika, last but certainly not least, what advice, what insight would you give to someone who is either considering running for political office or making a major life change?
what I would just say is certainly always be true to yourself and push forward in what you know is right. And we need good people in service. I mean, I think that this is a perfect example that we need good people who are in it for the right reasons to serve. And when you have good people, you need to get more of them. And so don't let anybody's, someone say, well, this person didn't win, I can't win. Never think what you can't do. Just know that God has a path for you, and everybody's journey is different. And so accept your journey for what it is. Don't try and be somebody else, be you, and follow your dreams. And I would say that if you are in it for the right reasons, please run. And then in addition to running, though, we need people all around too. Just we talked about the voter engagement. That's really important. We need more people who understand government to talk in their communities, because we have so many ill-informed citizens, and that's why we get bad results.
Yeah. All right. Tameika Issac Devine, Deitra Stover Matthews, Tyler Bailey. Thank you guys so much for being so open and honest and willing to come on and share all of this information. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Trey.
Thank you.
Everybody enjoy your holidays.
Thank you, Tyler. Same to you. Same to you. Listen, this has been such a great conversation, and we thank you so much for joining us today. One thing I have taken from life and from the conversation today and yesterday, just because you lost or didn't win an election doesn't mean that you lost. You could gain so much more personally, professionally, mentally, physically, and emotionally. Listen, if you have a story or initiative that could help someone cope with COVID, please email booking@copingwithtretailor.com. That information should be scrolling on the bottom. Also, if you have a product or service that could help someone cope with COVID, please email copingwithtretailor@gmail.com. We would love for you to be a proud sponsor, just like SCDHEC, In It Together SC, and the Diabetes Advisory Council, who sponsor Wellness Wednesday. Computers Unique, Dutch Square Mall. The Fifth Circuit Solicitor's Office Attorney Byron Gibson, who sponsors No Justice, No Peace on First Thursday. Agape Counseling and Training Services. Also the Comet Bus System and Palmetto Media Connections. Now, coming up next, Wellness Wednesday, busting the myths about epilepsy. We'll talk to the people who advocate with Kim Hardy, with Hardy Hands, and Dr. Raquel with the Morehouse School of Medicine. Then Thursday, it's going to be a fun holiday show. J. Anthony Brown murders the holiday hits. George Wallace shares his favorite and least favorite holiday memories and music. And Holiday SOS, Save Our Songs with Kapanda Narciso, plus comedian Akintunde parodies some holiday music. It's going to be a great show, and we look forward to seeing you. Then on Friday, Regina Skeeters tells us about her new holiday song, and Jimmy Wright gets us ready for Kwanzaa. That and more coming up next week on Coping with COVID. As always, I leave you with a reading from Jesus Calling. Today is the 17th, I do believe, of December, and Jesus says, "Come to me with your gaping emptiness, knowing that in me you are complete. As you rest quietly in my presence, my light within you grows brighter and brighter. Facing the emptiness inside you is simply the prelude to being filled with my fullness. Therefore, rejoice on those days when you drag yourself out of bed feeling sluggish and inadequate. Tell yourself, this is the perfect day to depend on me," Jesus says, in childlike trust. If you persevere in this dependence as you go through your day, you will discover by bedtime that joy and peace have become your companions. You may not realize at what point they joined you on your journey, but you will feel the beneficial effects of their presence. The perfect end to such a day is a doxology of gratitude. I am he from whom all blessings flow. That's your Jesus Calling for today, December 17th. I'm Tre Tailor. Thank you again so much for joining us. And until the next time, half a day at school. I wish you peace and abundant blessings. Take care. God bless. Stay safe. And don't forget to wear your mask over your nose and under your face. And also get the vaccine, right? Get your shot like this one. And me.
2 shots.
2 shots. 2 shots.
And
Bye,
never
y'all.
cried.
Never cried. Bye, everybody.
Coping with COVID. Updates on the pandemic and information to help you thrive and survive COVID-19. It's brought to you by the South Carolina Department of Health and Environmental Control. Visit scdheck.gov for an updated list of testing sites and important information on how to protect yourself, your family, and friends from the coronavirus. SCDHEC. Healthy people, healthy communities. In it together and the South Carolina Diabetes Advisory Council, presenting Wellness Wednesday every Wednesday on Coping with COVID. The City of Columbia Office of Business Opportunities, helping to meet the needs of small, minority, and women-owned businesses in the City of Columbia. Log on to columbiasc.net/OBO. Agape Counseling and Training Services. Call 803-779-2777 for licensed professionals of counselors and social workers helping families, engaged and married couples, and individuals of all ages gain an understanding of all aspects of their lives. If you're having a challenge coping with COVID, contact Agape Counseling and Training Services at agapects.com. And Palmetto Media Connections, connecting media and communities together. Coping with COVID, brought to you by SCDHEC. In it together, the Diabetes Advisory Council, the City of Columbia Office of Business Opportunities, Agape Counseling and Training Center, and Palmetto Media Connections.
Coping with COVID with Tre Tailor.